Now to the war on ISIS. CBS News has confirmed the U.S. and its Arab allies have launched more airstrikes against Islamic terrorists in Syria. For the past 2 days, the military has bombed and launched missiles aimed at ISIS in Syria and Iraq. Meanwhile, an Algerian group linked to ISIS has beheaded French hostage Hervé Gordel. Gordel was abducted on Sunday. At the United Nations, President Obama asked world leaders to join the fight to dismantle ISIS. CBS 2's Tony Aiello has a story now from the UN.
There can be no reasoning, no negotiation with this brand of evil. The only language understood by killers like this is the language of force. So the United States of America will work with a broad coalition to dismantle this network of death.
The president noted that dismantling effort is underway. 2 days of missile strikes already degrading ISIS command, control, and finance facilities.
So air power has been effective. And now, as their supplies begin to get hit and other things begin to happen, I believe there is the possibility of a slow degrading that ultimately, and I say ultimately because the president's been clear, this will take time. You and others should not be looking for some massive retreat within the next week or two.
Mr. Obama wants to involve as many nations as possible in the fight against ISIS. Key Muslim nations, including Saudi Arabia, are providing support.
Today I ask the world to join in this effort. Those who have joined ISIL should leave the battlefield while they can. Those who continue to fight for a hateful cause will find they are increasingly alone.
After his speech, the president attended a lunch with other heads of state and government. When he returns to Washington, he'll face demands for an explicit congressional vote authorizing strikes on ISIS. New York Democrat Gerald Nadler among those asking key questions.
Just how steep is the slippery slope we are embarking upon? How long will the conflict last? Is there an exit strategy? What does victory look like? How much will it cost? How many lives, U.S. lives, will be lost?
Late this afternoon, the president scored a victory here at the United Nations. The Security Council adopting a resolution. This is a global ban on travel by fighters trying to join overseas conflicts. This ban aimed specifically at young would-be jihadis who are trying to reach ISIS-controlled territory in Syria and Iraq. Reporting live at the United Nations, Tony Aiello, CBS 2 News.
Tony, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Maurice Dubois.
And I'm Christine Johnson. America goes after ISIS, sending a message, and this is only the beginning.
A total of 8 airstrikes took place last night, late in the evening in Syria. One of the targets, a shadowy offshoot of al-Qaida, preparing an imminent attack on America or Europe. The president is in New York tonight, looking to strengthen his anti-ISIS coalition at the United Nations.
CBS 2 political reporter Marcia Kramer leads our team coverage on fighting ISIS.
From the sea, 2 U.S. Navy ships fired a barrage of 47 Tomahawk cruise missiles. From the air, military forces used fighter jets and bombers, a total of 14 strikes. In eastern Syria, the targets were ISIS training camps and facilities. In western Syria, a simultaneous attack on a shadowy al-Qaida offshoot, the Khorasan group, that was preparing an imminent strike on the U.S. or Europe.
We believe the Khorasan group was nearing the execution phase of an attack either in Europe or the homeland.
Stunning revelations about the nature of the plots. Sources saying the Khorasan terrorists reportedly intended to use a bomb or bombs made of a non-metallic device, toothpaste container, and clothing dipped in explosive material. One option, officials say, involved concealed bombs on airplanes.
While it's not our policy to discuss future operations, I can tell you that last night's strikes were only the beginning.
President Obama announced the actions shortly before flying to New York for the UN General Assembly and meetings to strengthen his anti-ISIS coalition.
We're going to do what's necessary to take the fight to this terrorist group for the security of the country and the region and for the entire world.
The president scoring a major victory, getting 5 Arab nations, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Bahrain, and Qatar, to join the attacks on ISIS.
The strength of this coalition makes it clear to the world that this is not America's fight alone.
The Arabs didn't join the U.S. in launching 8 attacks on Khorasan targets. The group's so dangerous, its activities have been top secret and classified, according to Congressman Peter King, a member of the Homeland Security Committee.
They are extremely deadly, extremely vicious and extremely sophisticated. So it's a cause for real concern. They are a deadly, deadly group.
Could New York have been a target?
We have to always assume that New York and Long Island are the #1 terrorist target.
A military official said the ISIS attacks took out key training camps and facilities, but he also said it was too early to tell if the Khorasan raids were able to disrupt the attack being planned by the group. Tomorrow, the president chairs an unusual UN Security Council meeting. He'll seek support for resolution for countries to prevent their citizens from fighting for foreign terror groups like ISIS. Christine, Maurice.
Marsha Kramer, thank you.
Thank you, Marsha.
In Syria, a new front in a long war. Missiles fired from warships dropped by air, most targeting the ISIS stronghold of Raqqa. But they also zeroed in on a new terror group inside Syria called Khorasan. We have breaking details on how that active plot targeting America was stopped.
Really surprising developments. And our news, ABC News national security team, up all night, as you can imagine, tracking this story. And let's start with Martha Raddatz, who is in Washington. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, Robin. This is a major escalation in this fight. It may not have been shock and awe, but the wave of airstrikes that hit Syria last night was the biggest we've seen in a single day since the U.S. began attacking ISIS in early August. And we did not do it alone, and we did not just attack ISIS.
The strikes were launched from the air and the sea, missiles and precision-guided bombs from U.S. stealth bombers, stealth fighters, and armed drones pummeling 22 targets in Syria with 47 Tomahawk missiles fired from Navy warships in the Persian Gulf and Red Sea.
Very different from what we've been doing in Iraq. This is almost like a Desert Storm, where we went in with lots of firepower, everything that the United States has, all our best gear is going into this fight because we have to treat it like a very high-threat environment.
14 of the targets were aimed at ISIS headquarters, supply depots, command and control centers, and finance centers, stretching from the ISIS stronghold of Raqqa, where the Americans and British hostage were executed, and across the east to the Iraq border. But 8 additional al-Qaida targets were hit to disrupt what the U.S. called an imminent attack against the United States and Western interests by the Khorasan group. Warplanes from 5 largely Sunni nations, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, helped with the attacks against ISIS.
This other threat that people are learning about this morning, the terror group many officials believe is even a bigger threat, as the Admiral said, to the U.S. ABC's Brian Ross is here. He has many more details on that this morning. Good morning, Brian.
Well, good morning, Robin. Khorasan is a shadowy group of about 50 veteran al-Qaeda fighters from Afghanistan, who the U.S., as Admiral Kirby said, considers far more dangerous than ISIS. Officials said they've been using a facility in Syria near Aleppo to plot an imminent attack on American aviation using a new generation of undetectable explosives. Now, the U.S. alone carried out those 8 airstrikes against the Khorasan group, including training camps, an explosives and munitions production facility, a communications building, and command and control facilities.
Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says that the U.S. led airstrikes in Syria are illegal because they were not approved by or coordinated with Damascus. Rouhani added that launching airstrikes in a country must be carried out either based on the UN Security Council's approval or that country's official request. Otherwise, Rouhani said the airstrikes could be considered as aggression. The Iranian president was speaking with several news editors in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly meeting. Rouhani described as ambiguous efforts to simultaneously combat terrorists and support groups to fight the government in Syria. He said the first step to fight terrorism in Syria should be restoring stability there through helping the government, even if its performance is criticized. Daniel Patrick Welch is a political commentator who joins us from Boston to share his thoughts about what Iran's president has said. Well, Daniel Patrick Welch, Iran's president here is talking about the sovereignty of a nation, and if these strikes that have been coordinated, U.S.-led, involving some regional countries, does not have a UN mandate in particular, that they're considered illegal.
Well, that's exactly right. It's I would go a step further and say that it's a planned
act of aggression that's been in the works for a long time, and this is just a backdoor entry to this reality. The U.S. has been planning an act of aggression from the air on Syria for years, and they use this ISIS boogeyman to carry it out.
Now, of course, you know, we can talk about a country that's far away from the region and saying, well, why should Iran say that? But, you know, Iran is surrounded by the U.S. and its bases in the region. We could talk about Bahrain. Right. We could talk about Iraq. We could talk about Afghanistan on the other side. So there is obviously cause for concern. Do you think, and this question has come about often, that the U.S. may be using this as a pretext, this fight against the ISIL, as a pretext to actually go after Assad and have him ousted?
It's not a pretext at all. It is Plan A. And Rouhani is right to be concerned. And when we talk about distance from Syria, well, how about the United States, which is 10,000 miles away? You know, they're pursuing their own agenda. You can see it in, it's not ambiguous. There's no ambiguity at all. Not only did they train and create ISIS, but they are openly supporting other so-called moderate rebels who have exactly this goal, which is to topple the elected government in Syria. It is an act of aggression and threatens not only Assad, but Iran, China, Russia. It is a shot across the bow of their global war on terror, which was the same thing as the global war on drugs. Just again, a backdoor or a trapdoor to illegal covert operations that they can't force through the UN Security Council, even though they have so much control there.
Syrian leaders say American strikes in their country will be considered an act of aggression. On Wednesday, Barack Obama announced a broad U.S. air assault on Islamic State jihadists inside both Syria and Iraq. And Russia is also warning that Washington's intervention in Syria will amount to aggression and a gross legal violation. RT's Anastasia Churkina has more.
Abiding by international law in principle is a very clear concept, but in reality it's apparently fine to interpret liberally every once in a while. The U.S. did get asked for help by Iraq to fight against ISIS, also known as Islamic State.
The government of Iraq has invited the United States of America and asked for help. It has asked for help from the United States. It has asked for help from its neighbors, from other countries in the region. And under international law, when a country is invaded and a country invites somebody to come in and help them, we have every right in the world to respond to that request.
But no such request or approval of airstrikes ever came from Syria, whose territory the U.S. will now bomb, because there are Islamic State members there too.
Unfortunately, the president continues to talk about opposing President Assad, and frankly, Assad can be a big help, and I think along with Iran.
Another approval for airstrikes that was not requested was that of the U.S. Congress representing the American people. And while some Americans are accepting of this,
we need to eradicate terrorists wherever the terrorists are.
Others are not, having seen enough U.S. military action throughout recent years.
No. I don't think you should be bombing, dropping bombs on another sovereign country. Period. Unless they agree to it or ask you to.
In fact, the Syrian government has actually said any airstrikes would be considered an act of aggression.
The opinion of the international community, such as the UN Security Council, has also been nonchalantly brushed aside by Washington, while even America's key Western ally, Great Britain, has yet to announce what, if any, line of action it will be taking when it comes to the airstrikes over Syria.
Just because we see something that's horrific doesn't necessarily mean that our elected leaders or our government knows best how to deal with it. So sometimes it's better to take a step back.
But taking a step back when it comes to military escapades in the Middle East is a position the U.S. has proven not to be a fan of, with yet another military action plan raising more concerns than potentially being a solution. From the legitimacy of striking over Syria without the approval of Damascus, the U.S. Congress, or any international body, to the scope, timeline, and consequences of the newly announced operations to come in the Middle East, Washington shows yet again that it will act how it wants when it wants to, not necessarily applying to itself the standards it so often preaches to others. Anastasia Churkina, RT, New York.
Shortly after the U.S. confirmed another round of airstrikes against militant targets in Syria, President Barack Obama appealed at the UN General Assembly for more help in the fight against the Islamic State.
Already over 40 nations have offered to join this coalition. Today I ask the world to join in this effort.
But as the growing international coalition gains momentum in the fight to defeat the militants in Iraq and Syria, the question becomes what next, says the Middle East Institute's Daniel Serwer.
You have to answer the question, what next? What's going to happen once you defeat the Islamic State? Who is going to govern on the territory that's liberated from it?
Serwer says if the U.S.-led coalition cannot answer the question, what next, it will be answered for them.
You can expect radicals to appear from someplace who will answer that question. So it's really important that the United States be thinking around the next corner.
Another challenge that could emerge in the fight against Islamic militants is that long-standing tensions between some coalition members could cause the international alliance to fray at the seams, says Middle East analyst Michelle Dunn.
At the moment, they've set aside some of those differences, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, for example, and everyone's working together, but that will be challenging to sustain over the longer term.
As the fight continues, Dunn says the important thing the Obama administration can do is show that it is willing to keep focus on the issue, no matter how long it takes. Pam Dawkins, VOA News, the State Department.
Last night, at the direction of the President of the United States, U.S. military forces under the command of United States Central Command, in conjunction with coalition partners in the region, executed a series of strikes against ISIL and other terrorist targets in Syria. Coalition strikes targeted ISIL training camps, headquarters, command and control facilities, logistical nodes, armored vehicles, and leadership. U.S. military forces also executed unilateral precision strikes against the Khorasan Group, an AQ-affiliated terrorist organization located in northwest Syria. The intelligence reports indicated that the Khorasan Group was in the final stages of plans to execute major attacks against Western targets and potentially the U.S. homeland. Last night's strikes were organized in 3 waves. The first wave began around midnight in Syria, or 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. I draw your attention to the map. The first slide, please. In the first wave of strikes, the USS Arleigh Burke in the Red Sea and the USS Philippine Sea in the northern Arabian Gulf launched more than 40 Tomahawk cruise missiles in eastern and northern Syria. And as you look at that slide, it is the target area around Aleppo and al-Raqqa. The majority of the Tomahawk strikes were against Khorasan Group compounds, their manufacturing workshops, and training camps. The second wave consisted of F-22 Raptors in their first combat role, F-15 Strike Eagles, F-16s, B-1 bombers, and drones. They launched from bases in the region around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time against targets in northern Syria. Targets included ISIL headquarters, training camps, barracks, and combat vehicles. The final wave occurred shortly after midnight Eastern Standard Time. F-18s from the USS George H.W. Bush in the northern Arabian Gulf and regionally based U.S. F-16s, among others, attacked targets in eastern Syria to include ISIL training camps and combat vehicles, principally in that circle to the far east around Dar es-Zor. Coalition partners participated in both the second and third waves, supporting with a range of combat capabilities that began with combat air patrols to actual strikes on targets. The preponderance of coalition support was in the third wave. 96% of all the delivered munitions were precision-guided munitions. And I'd like now to show you several before and after pictures that highlight the effects of these munitions. If I can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. This first picture shows an ISIL finance center in Raqqa. It's a before and after. On the left is the before, and on the right, as you look at it, is the after. It was engaged with Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from the USS Philippine Sea. Now, the intended target was the communications array on the roof of the building. The Tomahawk cruise missiles detonated as airbursts, with the effects focusing on the communications array. And as you can see on the right-hand side in the picture, the after picture, the rooftop communications is heavily damaged, while the surrounding structure remains largely intact. If I can go to the next slide, please. This second picture shows an ISIL command and control building in Raqqa that was targeted by U.S. Air Force F-22s during the second wave of strikes. And this strike was the first time the F-22 was used in a combat role. The flight of the F-22s delivered GPS-guided munitions, precision munitions, targeting, again, only the right side of the building. You can see on the left-hand side the before shot, and then you can see, as you look at it, on the right-hand side, the after shot. And you can see that the command and control center, where it was located in the building, was destroyed. If I can go to the third slide. The third and final picture is a residence near the town of Abu Kamal, and it's along the border between Syria and Iraq. This was a residential area that had been used for training site and for a logistics site for ISIL fighters. It was engaged with multiple GPS-guided munitions fired from F-18s launched from the USS George H.W. Bush. And as you can see, the aircraft targeted locations within the boundaries, within the fence line of the residence. There is a video here that shows exactly how that was done. So give me a moment here to switch to the video, and I'll let you look at that as well, of this same target. Again, you'll note that the effects of the strike were contained within the boundaries of the target area. As these pictures in the video highlight, the strikes involved multiple aircraft and cruise missiles from several countries. It was through the careful planning and coordination of U.S. Central Command's Combined Air Operations Center, located in the region, that these strikes were successful with minimal collateral damage. Last night's strikes are the beginning of a credible and sustainable, persistent campaign to degrade and ultimately destroy ISIL. Our immediate tasks are to continue the degradation of ISIL in Syria and Iraq, to build and strengthen regional partners, and to build a regional coalition, to assist in placing Iraqi security forces and Peshmerga forces on the offensive.
The battlefields of the future will be more dangerous than ever. In the 21st century, there will be threats to our freedom and security like never before. But will we be ready? Battles will be fought on land and sea, but they will not be won without supremacy in the air. Enter the incredible world of 21st century combat.
Air power is the dominant strategic force. It's air power that lets you influence events and respond to events quickly. It's air power that lets you fight a war without putting hundreds of thousands of people on the ground.
To date, Air Force F-15s have won more than 150 dogfights against enemy fighters without a single loss. And the Navy F-18 Hornet is widely recognized as the world's best carrier-based fighter bomber. But in the future, neither the F-15 nor the F-18 will be able to survive against deadly enemy anti-aircraft missiles.
Surface-to-air missiles, or SAMs, are going to represent the biggest threat. Those very formidable systems developed in Russia or China will have to be taken out of action very quickly in any future conflict.
The fighter of the future will need to be stealthy to slip past enemy radar. It must be able to take out anti-aircraft installations. And it must out-dogfight any enemy fighters that get in the way. That future fighter is already here. The F-22 Raptor. The air dominance fighter of the 21st century. Developed by Lockheed Martin, this advanced tactical fighter has been designed to be the first plane to cross enemy lines, clearing the way for all other forces.
The F-22 is both an air-to-air fighter and an air-to-surface fighter, so it can drop precision weapons.
That means it'll be able to go in early in a conflict, knock out all the air defenses that an enemy has, and also take out certain ground targets. And open the door for all the U.S. forces, whether they're ground vehicles or other aircraft, to come in and continue the fight.
The development of the F-22 Raptor first began in 1985, when the Air Force requested proposals for an advanced tactical fighter jet to replace the F-15 air superiority fighter. Military planners feared that the F-15 would not be able to counter new air and ground threats on the horizon. The result was the creation of the F-22.
The capability of the aircraft is a quantum leap above what exists right now, and it's going to take air power and revolutionize it into a whole new world.
In the battles of the future, stealth will be critical for all new fighters to avoid being seen by enemy radar.
Non-stealthy aircraft just will not survive in the air battles of tomorrow.
Stealth technology was created to counter advances in radar. Radar works by sending out radio waves and measuring the amount reflected back to determine the distance, speed, and course of an object. But stealth aircraft are designed with surfaces that deflect radio waves away, making them nearly invisible to radar. The world's first stealth production aircraft was the F-117 Nighthawk.
The reason that airplane is faceted is a limitation of the computer technology at the time. It's easier to model a finite number of flat surfaces than it is a bunch of curved surfaces.
And while the aircraft was a breakthrough at the time, the facets limited the plane aerodynamically. But now, thanks to more powerful computers, engineers can design aircraft that do not have to sacrifice aerodynamics for stealth.
The F/A-22's aerodynamic slickness allows it to have the lowest drag of almost any aircraft ever produced.
The F-22's aerodynamic superiority, combined with its stealth and firepower, make it a far better adversary than any aircraft before it. The F-15, which the F-22 will replace, has been a very successful fighter, but it is not stealthy. The F-117, while stealthy, carries no air-to-air weapons and is not designed for air combat. It relies on stealth and mission planning to protect itself. But the F-22, on the other hand, is not only stealthy, but comes with a full complement of air-to-air and air-to-ground weapons.
The primary armament is in weapons bays underneath the airplane, where we carry 6 medium-range radar-guided missiles.
By carrying the weapons internally, it preserves the stealthy shape of the plane. For closer infighting, the F-22 has short-range missiles and guns.
Behind these two doors right here is the side weapons bay. This is where we carry a heat-seeking missile. For close-in armament, the Raptor is equipped with the M61A2 cannon. The muzzle is hidden right behind this door right here. It's hidden because of the stealth characteristics of the airplane. The cannon carries 480 rounds and is capable of shooting 100 rounds a second.
The F-22's advanced weapons systems will make it a formidable interceptor, as will its unique ability to find enemy aircraft without revealing its own position. When other planes use their radar, they become visible to every other radar system in the area. But that's not the case with the F-22.
Perhaps the highest tech part of the airplane is the radome itself. Not only does the radome have to be stealthy, but it has to be able to transmit and receive its own radar signals.
How the F-22 radar achieves that remarkable feat is classified. But what is known is that the F-22 can see enemy aircraft at a distance while remaining invisible to them.
The first time that the bad guys will really notice an F-22 in the area is when one of them blows up.
Along with its advanced radar system, the F-22 is the first fighter to have supercruise, the ability to travel faster than the speed of sound without using its afterburners. A jet's afterburners boost speed by pouring fuel directly into the hot blast of the engines, adding fiery extra thrust. But afterburners are also wasteful, consuming enormous amounts of fuel, dramatically affecting the range and duration of a plane's mission. But the F-22 doesn't have that problem. Without using afterburners, it can supercruise at an incredible 1.5 times the speed of sound, over 1,000 miles per hour.
This is all about our pilots being able to go fast, minimize the amount of time they are exposed to any threat, do the mission that we've sent them to do, turn around and come home safely.
The F-22 is presently the only fighter in the world with supercruise, but it wouldn't be possible without a very unique set of engines.
The goals for Pratt & Whitney were to provide a transformational engine that the Air Force needed, one that was stealthy, maintainable, and fast.
The F-119 PW-100 was developed by Pratt & Whitney after years of research. It sets the new standard for jet engines. Along with its incredible supersonic ability, the F-119 incorporates thrust vectoring.
Here we are at the rear end of an F-A-22 Raptor. First thing you'll notice are the nozzles for the F-119 engines. In flight, during a maneuvering dogfight, they actually move up and down and vector the thrust of the engine to provide maneuverability.
It helps us turn inside any foe, maneuver at low or high speeds to outmaneuver another airplane or potentially an enemy weapon that's headed towards us.
The F-22's stealth, supercruise, and vector thrusting are impressive breakthroughs, but its most outstanding feature may be its ability to nearly fly itself through advanced computerized controls.
It relieves the pilot of all the duties, gives the pilot total freedom to just look out engaged in the combat scenario.
In addition to monitoring its own performance, the F-22 constantly gathers data on other aircraft in the combat area and presents the most important information to the pilot.
We're going to have information passed to us from either unmanned vehicles or from off-board sensors so that we can integrate data and use that information for targeting. And it's the way that we are driving our forces in warfare. We are much more integrated with both other services and with other platforms, and the F-22 fits right into that concept.
The F-22 Raptor's total package of avionics, stealth, supercruise, and thrust vectoring make it the most technologically advanced fighter today.
I've never been in an airplane that accelerates as fast, that's as agile, the ability to turn very sharply, and it just brings a great combination of the speed, the stealth, and the avionics to the fight that nobody else is going to be able to touch.
But there will be future competitors, like the Russian Sukhoi 37, which features thrust vectoring and a radical forward swept-wing design. And the fifth-generation MiG, the 1.22, which some have nicknamed the F-22ski.
The Russians are still very active aircraft developers. They've got a variety of technologies that they're continuing to improve upon and that can be made available to our future enemies. And so that's why we have to stay on top of the technology that we are developing and make sure that it is able to take out anything that other countries develop.
When you look at the adoption by China of the Su-27 and the fact that it'll probably be modernized and improved, that brings up the need for more advanced fighter aircraft in the US. And that's one of the main reasons, I think, why the Air Force is so insistent on the need to have the F-22.
In addition to Russia, other U.S. allies are producing advanced interceptors for export that are superior to the F-15, such as Sweden's JAS-39 Gripen and France's new Rafale. Germany, Italy, and the UK have joined forces to create a Eurofighter, the Typhoon. If these planes fall into unfriendly hands, the U.S. Air Force will need the F-22 to maintain their advantage.
We're always going to go into war wanting to have that air dominance, and the F-22 is going to be the big boy on the block that can help us to do that.
In future combat, the F-22 is to be joined by another stealthy aircraft, the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, the ground attack bomber of the future. Designed for the U.S. Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Britain's Royal Navy, the question is, will it work for every user? The rules of war have changed. Brute force has given way to high tech, and conventional weapons of the past will no longer be effective. In future battles, the F-22 will be the first fighter to cross enemy lines, surgically removing air and ground targets. Next in the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, the attack bomber of the future. It will assume the air-to-ground attack role for the U.S. military. The F-35 can carry heavy weapons externally for maximum effect. But when a smaller payload is carried internally, it is nearly as stealthy as the vaunted F-117 Nighthawk.
It has a significant amount of stealth capability to allow it to be used early on in a campaign, and it has a significant amount of weapons carrying and payload capability to be used at the later stages of the campaign. The threat to the air not be as significant and require less stealth.
Creating a ground attack bomber that would meet the needs of the Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Britain's Royal Navy.
The F-22 fighter, which is said to be among the world's most advanced fighter planes, made its debut during the Syrian strikes. The pilots controlling the F-22 Raptor flew bombing runs over Syria, targeting the militant Islamic State group. An official with the Air Force explained the F-22 has a unique ability to approach adversaries in a way legacy aircraft can't. There are things the F-22 is uniquely suited to address that the other fighters in our inventory can't. The fighter, which has been built by Lockheed Martin Corp., can reportedly drop an aerial bomb from more than 15 miles away from its intended target. Syrian air defense systems can't detect the plane, and the fact that the F-22 can also fly at higher speeds and altitudes led to the decision to utilize it. The plane is outfitted with sensors that allow for a highly detailed view of a combat zone. $67 billion has been put into the F-22 program, and the cost to make each plane is about $412 million.
Missile away.
335.6 now today.
Stabbing. Clear. Engage. Come right. All right. Stop. Steady platform.